I say parents here, but of course this can be any adult that works with adolescents, obviously. The very first thing that in the research that I saw, I thought this is something we've got to spread the word about. Avoid repeated criticism of the friend. Okay? That's the first thing that parents especially are going to want to do. They're going to tell you how bad that friend is. That friend is terrible. She does this. She does that. She is this. What are the adolescents going to do? They're going to be defensive. What else? Is that basically what y'all said? A lot of people answered at the same time. I heard defensive over here. But yes, they're going to get defensive. They're going to defend that friend. You, parent, do not know what you're talking about. Okay? You do not know my friend. You do not know their circumstances. You do not know the emotional pain my friend is in. Parent, you don't know anything. And remember, we talked about how at this point in adolescence, friends are everything. So the parent will not be picked as knowing what's right and what's wrong. So what they say is the article that I got this from spoke about is talking about the behavior that the friend has. Okay? Now that's still not always going to go over great, but it's better than repeated criticism of the person themselves. So I don't like it when your friend cancels at the last minute. It seems like that happens a lot. And then you leave it. And you don't even talk about it every day, which that can be tough, because if we feel like if we feel like we have to get this done quickly or we have to move fast, and as parents and helpers, we get anxious, oh, this is horrible, we have to make this stop. But we have to, I think the example that in the article was, let's not bombard with a whole lot of criticism. We just kind of point it out and we let them go from there. The parents can set limits. You can set limits on your child so that you know as a parent where that child is going, who that child is going with, so that you can have that control, which of course that's what we would hope is happening anyway. Yes, this could increase the potential for defiant behavior. I'm going to go anyway. Okay. Well, now we're dealing more with defiant behavior, and we talk about that. We give the consequence for the defiant behavior, but we do try to set the limit. And again, I think that goes back to some of the stuff that we talked about where kids want the structure. They want the limits. They want to know your values. No, they're not always going to agree with it, and they're going to push those limits. But we have to be consistent, and if they break the rule, if they say, if the parent says you can't do this or you have to be back at this time, then we give the consequence around that particular issue. Provide structure. Maybe you do try to get to know that friend a little bit better. Maybe they're having a rough time and things can get better. So you provide some structure in which to get to know that person so that you can have some validity in what you're saying, even though you feel like you probably already have that validity and you don't need any more. The child probably thinks you need some more. So if you can build that in with some structure, then you can potentially build some credibility around what you're saying about this person to your child. You got to talk about it. And again, this goes back to the comment about we're not really taught how to do that. We're not really taught how to interact with a friend who is not treating us right. I know sometimes when I have to address issues, even if it's not necessarily about a toxic relationship or it's just an issue within a friendship, sometimes I'm pumped. I know what I'm going to say. I'm going to address the issue, and then I do. And then I'm like, I hear what they have to say, and then I'm like, oh, well, maybe. And so then I'm kind of, like questioning myself sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And so then you're like, well, was I right? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was reading it wrong. So then you kind of start questioning yourself. So it's about standing up. If it doesn't feel right, you got to stand up for how you feel and for what you know. So you have to talk about, you know what, this friend does not seem like this is somebody who's right for you, who's treating you right. And you point out those things, and you address it head on. Again, not every day, not every night at dinner, not every morning before school, but you do address it. Provide support, not judgment. And I think that's what all these other things here are saying, is that you provide the support to your child and encouragement, and you talk with them when they need to, if they have their feelings hurt or something happens, as opposed to turning it and judging the other child. You can speak to the school. You know, I encourage the folks that I work with to call the school every day. Because especially when I worked here and the kiddos would have trouble in school, you know, they would say, oh yeah, we got up on Friday morning and I forgot to give him his meds and he went to school and he got suspended. Okay, well, did you call the school to let them know that you forgot to? No. Like, it never even crossed their mind to share information. Or, you know, even if you're working on a consequence, or, you know, you're trying, you know, there's Parenting with Love and Logic. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but part of it is, you know, where, okay, I'm leaving in 5 minutes. The car is leaving in 5 minutes, and you need to be in the car if you want to ride to school with me. So maybe they get in the car in their pajamas, all right? So maybe you've already worked it out with the school where they can go and change their clothes or whatever. So constant communication with the school, because, as a couple of you have pointed out today, that's where they spend most of their time. That's where they're making these friendships and building these relationships. So if you are in communication with the school, then you know what they're doing, they know what you're doing, and everybody can be on the same page, and we don't always have mixed messages. You can seek out law enforcement if you feel like that's something that you need to do. If you feel like it's getting to a place where things are dangerous, then definitely, you know, you can go there. Letting folks know that it's okay to be angry. Letting kids know, especially females, okay? Society tells girls it's not okay to be angry. If you really show your anger and you're a woman and you turn around and walk out of the room, you probably know some of the names that folks are going to be using. What's wrong with her? That was ridiculous. Okay? Women typically, I think it's better, but girls are just typically not taught to be angry, or that it's okay to be angry and have those emotions. So it's okay, we need to tell kids that it's okay to be mad. I believe that there are no negative emotions. No emotion is negative, because emotions come from our core. Okay, you don't stop and think, how am I going to feel about that? I think I'm going to be, mad. No, you just feel it. Something happens and you just instantly feel how you're going to feel. You don't decide how you're going to feel. You can decide from there. You have that emotion that overwhelms you, and from there you make your choices. Okay, I'm angry. This is how I'm going to handle it. Or, you know what, that really made me mad, but I'm not going to let it ruin my day. And you move from there. So emotions are, to me, there's no negative emotion, because they're just so primitive. It just is what it is. So it's okay to be angry. We teach. What do you do when you're mad? What do you do when you're feeling really anxious? What's okay? What's appropriate? Have you guys seen that poster that it's a big angry face in the middle, and it's titled, "What's Behind Your Anger?" And then all around it are faces that depict shame, embarrassment, fear, anxiety, guilt. Okay? Those feelings get lost in the mix, because anger is powerful. It can kind of intimidate people. If you yell, what happens? People tend to leave you alone. People back off. I'm sorry? It's energizing. You bet. How do you if you're fearful, you're probably not very energized. And how do people view you? Or how do you feel like people view you, I guess I should say? Maybe weak. So, especially with teenagers, maybe we need to look at what's behind the anger. Are you feeling guilt because of this toxic relationship? Are you feeling anxiety because you don't know how to get out of it? Are you feeling shame because you've done things you wouldn't normally have done? And then manage your own feelings. This is for the grown-up, especially parents. You're not going to be happy if your child is being treated poorly. You're going to be mad. You're going to be mad for your child. So you need to manage your own emotions, again, as a role model, as a teacher for your kiddo, so they know what's appropriate and what's not. Prevention. And these are things that start very early. So this is something that you can take back to your home if you're a parent, and these are things you take back to your parents as you work with them. You work on helping parents build a positive self-esteem in their kiddos. Okay? That starts at home. Spending time with kids helps build a self-esteem. If a parent wants to spend time with their kids, well, then kids feel valued. I'm special. Something that Gary Landreth, who is a play therapist, kind of the guru of child-centered play therapy, he speaks about, he does this, of course, with little bitty kids, but if they're really causing a problem in the home, something he suggests that the parents do is to carve out 30 minutes a week, not a day, 30 minutes a week with the child in your home that is causing the most trouble. Okay? Again, this is kind of funny trailing away from toxic relationships. But if we're talking about building a relationship with your child so that they can have a good self-esteem, so finding 30 minutes a week, which can be hard, you bet, but you don't do any more, and you do things with that child where you're going to limit the amount of redirection that you have to give that child. Maybe you're shooting hoops, maybe you're cooking things. You know, you have to think outside the box a little bit for younger kids, because what he says for smaller kids is that you put toys on a blanket and you kind of do a little bit of a play therapy session. You just play with the child. But it's giving them that time and that attention. 30 minutes once a week. There's a whole lot more to it as far as kind of the therapeutic value. But I think if you want to learn about that particular thing, you can look him up. But I generalize it because I think that sometimes we can start thinking, oh, well, I have to spend all of this time with my child to build up the self-esteem. But they go to daycare, then they're at school, then we're cooking dinner, and then we're at home, and then it's bedtime and homework. So you run out of hours in your day. So sometimes it's not about being able to spend 24 hours a day with them, but it is about spending time with them that is positive, where there is no redirection, where there is no talking about the things that they have not done well lately. Have open lines of communication. And again, we've talked about today how maybe that's even with people outside of your immediate family. Maybe having those people that you're really good friends with and having those lines of communication open so your child feels like if they don't really feel like they can talk to you, they have somebody else or a couple of people to choose from in their world. Early teaching about boundaries and limits. And that's tough when the folks doing the teaching don't know a whole lot about boundaries and limits because they weren't taught about boundaries and limits. And so we have a cycle that goes on and goes on and goes on. That's tough. But I think that can be taught, obviously, to an adolescent. Hard to do. It's hard to set boundaries. It's not always fun to set boundaries. People sometimes don't like you when you set boundaries. But it can be something as simple as, which this is hard, again, we're talking about a toxic relationship, but, your friend calls you, and it's 9:30, Your parents say you have to, you can't be on the phone much past that. And you're anxious because she's going to be needy and upset, and you have to fight your parent over here. But a boundary would be, you know what, I'd really love to talk to you right now. I hear that you really are needing me, or it seems like you really need to talk. I can't talk right now. Yeah, that person is going to be mad, but that's a boundary. That's a boundary that protects you. Maybe it has nothing to do with a curfew. Maybe you just don't have the energy. So teaching, which I say simple, teaching a boundary, that's a boundary. I'm drawing the line, I'm taking care of me. Early education on healthy relationships, we've talked about that already, how it's done in schools, how we need to do it more in homes. And remember to model for your children. Remember that they're watching. No matter what you're doing, where you are, and whether you think they're watching or not, they're watching. And they're listening. Most definitely. That's it, you guys. Thanks so much for coming. Appreciate ya. Great participation. Thank you very much.